by the time we get through all the objections, we're going to say, hey, now that you understand how all these situations work, is there any reason why you wouldn't move forward at this point? That's where we want to get. That's the ending point. So I always say, begin with the end in mind. Where do you want to get? You want to get to the point where the objections are handled, that they've thought through them in their mind because you've pinpointed them, you've given a solution to it, and you can sweep that off the table and get them to the point where they say, I don't see objections anymore, I only see the benefit of utilizing the deferred sales trust. So I wanted to share that just so that you, as a listener, could have the end point in mind. We want to resolve this objection. So Brett just gave the objection about control, and we would start with the pinpoint question. And the pinpoint question is exactly what it sounds like. We're literally trying to pin that objection down and deal with it. And so I might say back to Brett, other than feeling and knowing that you have protections and controls, is there any other reason why you wouldn't move forward? And what we're doing is we're making them say no.
Hey everybody, Brett Swartz here with Dan Palmer, Capital Gains Tax Solutions. Hope you're doing great today. We're making a video on some of the top objections that folks might have, either if you're watching this as a potential lead to become a client for us, you're selling a business, you're selling real estate, you're selling Bitcoin, you have massive capital gains tax, and you're looking for some services to help you with this. And so this is what we're going to be talking about. And or you might be a financial advisor or a CPA or a business broker or a real estate agent, and you're wanting to help your clients take the next step forward with our services. And so Dan, what are we talking about today?
Today we're going to talk about an objection and kind of how to overcome that objection. And the objection that comes up all the time is the control objection. Like, in order to utilize the deferred sales trust, I have to have a trustee, and so that means I have to give up control in order to capture the deferral of the taxes. And so that's something that comes up all the time. And so we're going to kind of walk through how to wrestle through that issue.
Absolutely, and we're going to be using a gentleman named Rory Vaden. He has a framework for sales and persuasion and overcoming objections. And remember, the heart of all of this is to not talk someone into something that's not in their best fit. The heart of this is to help them overcome their fears and concerns so that they can do what's best for them. And so our approach here is really about that. Like, hey, we're only going to talk to you and open in discussion about certain things that could really help you. Any point that it's not a good fit, we'll tell you, and any point that it's not a good fit for you, tell us. And but stopping at the last hour of a deal or the last 30 days before you're closing because your fear of control has stopped people from using our services in the past. And so we don't want that to be you. We want to try to help you overcome this. And so that is our intent and our goal. And so Dan, let's start with the first part. And it's called, I'll just kind of read the objection. That's how most people are thinking or feeling it. And then we'll walk through the framework of the pinpoint question and the quid pro quo question and the creative solution. Okay. So the first thing is, hey, look, Dan, I don't know if I really want to give up this kind of control, Dan. I built my business, I built my real estate, I built my investments, and I'm used to having unilateral control. And control is really important to me, Dan. And with you guys, with Capital Gains Tax Solutions being the trustee, I don't have unilateral control or the ability to make, the decisions completely myself the way I used to. So I'm not sure if I'm willing to do that. Can you help me out?
Yeah, great. Yeah, so there you guys hear the issue is the control question. One of the things we like to do is to take each individual objection and kind of walk them through to their conclusion, to resolve it and to sweep it off the table. And then we can move on to the next objection and sweep that off the table. And by the time we get through all the objections, we're going to say, hey, now that you understand how all these situations work, is there any reason why you wouldn't move forward at this point? That's where we want to get. That's the ending point. So I always say, begin with the end in mind. Where do you want to get? You want to get to the point where the objections are handled, that they've thought through them in their mind because you've pinpointed them, you've given a solution to it, and you can sweep that off the table and get them to the point where they say, I don't see objections anymore, I only see the benefit of utilizing the deferred sales trust. So I wanted to share that just so that you, as a listener, could have the end point in mind. We want to resolve this objection. So Brett just gave the objection about control, and we would start with the pinpoint question. And the pinpoint question is exactly what it sounds like. We're literally trying to pin that objection down and deal with it. And so I might say back to Brett, other than feeling and knowing that you have protections and controls, is there any other reason why you wouldn't move forward? And what we're doing is we're making them say no. The only issue I have right now is the control issue. and we're kind of sweeping everything else and focusing on that one issue. So other than feeling and knowing that you have protections and controls, is there any other reason why you wouldn't move forward, Brett?
No, Dan, there's no other reason why I wouldn't move forward. And protections is a good word that you bring up there, because, sometimes I'm just like, where's the money going? And like, can the trustee just, go to Mexico or go to somewhere with all the millions of dollars? Like, just that whole idea of, wow, like, this is my spouse is asking me about it. My business partner's like, who's the person who's, helping with this? And just that so control is a piece of it. It's really like the protection and the transparency of it all, right, Dan? So, digging a little deeper, that's what I mean by control is just the protection and the flow of the cash.
Yeah, and so, a lot of times first of all, no money moves without your signature and approval. I think that's very important. You do have a trustee, there does have to be trust. We're directing the funds, but no money ever moves without your signature and approval. And if you're really worried about, what we're going to do with the money, you can bring in a financial planner, and the financial planner is the one that's going to kind of push the button and make the investments. And so the key thing is to have transparency by having a lot of people involved. So no money moves without your signature or approval. So we're talking to you before we make any moves. We're making a strategy with you before we make any moves. The legal team that creates the promissory note, they also have the eyes on the deal and where the money is supposed to go and how it's supposed to flow according to the strategy that you and I have put together. You have the financial planner, who's the one actually, dealing with the money at Schwab or some other place making the investments. If it goes into some sort of a real estate deal, you're going to have a 24/7 view access to the portal that they use. So you won't be able to direct the funds, but you'll be able to see the funds on a day-to-day basis. And then there's a third-party tax preparing group that's going to, at the end of every year, do the tax return. So their eyes are on it as well. So I think there's a lot of transparency and a lot of protections over the money. So realizing how that all works, Brett, knowing that you've got your approval and signature has to go into it. Your financial planner can be the one investing it. The tax attorney is the one creating the promissory note based on our strategy. Third-party tax preparers are looking over it. So with all that being said, resolving that control issue, the protection issue, is there any reason why you wouldn't move forward?
That was beautiful, Dan. Yeah, and so you gave specific, detailed how and what and where and when of all of the movement and of the different pieces. And I'd also add to those that are listening, each of those pieces that Dan talked about are independent third party. So there's an independent third party trustee, independent third party financial advisor, because we're not financial advisors. Should the trust have a financial advisor on it? Independent, even where the funds are at, typically Charles Schwab. So that's another third party from the advisor typically. Or even if they're at Raymond James or Merrill Lynch or Morgan Stanley or wherever, there's a third party, custodian, if you will, right, of the funds. And most of those are clearing at a place, Charles Schwab. And then you have third party independent tax attorneys that's doing the actual legal work. Then a third party tax preparer that's doing the tax returns of the trust and the books for the trust. So plus I'd add the sixth bonus one. Like if you partner with the trust, it's kind of like a self-directed IRA in that scenario. Now the trustee, our role still has to approve of that investment prior to anything moving, and you approve it as well. But then you're running that opportunity, running that business, that deal. And so there's so many, in fact, I would say there's more transparency and more protections in place because there's so many eyes and ears that are, in a sense, holding each other accountable, being able to see and have transparency. That helps to create a place where we can see if anything's missing, right, or anything's not looking like it should look. So that's really big, Dan. Yeah, and then I'd add to this too. So the after you pinpoint, right, and then you do the quid pro quo. If I could help you resolve the feeling and concern about being in control and protections of the movement of funds, would it be okay to go ahead and get started, And then they should say, yeah, that would be the big thing. Great. And then here's another creative solution that Dan kind of walked through, but I'll kind of read a little bit of our script that we've created. Hey, I completely understand your concerns around control. Most of the clients or the folks we work with before they become clients, they feel the exact same way that you do at first. And that's why our structure is built with multiple layers of transparency and oversight. Your capital is held typically at Charles Schwab, and it's in a single trust account, never commingled with other trust accounts. And we use independent third-party tax preparers and bookkeepers to provide both routine and on-demand reports. And close to over 30-year track record now, thousands of transactions and tens of thousands of tax returns have been filed with consistent, verifiable transparency of movement of funds. And by the way, you always have 24/7 access to view funds at Schwab or other portals, like Dan said, on real estate deals. And our whole capital gains tax ecosystem is designed specifically to give you confidence in objective proof that your money is protected and that the trust is operating exactly as agreed. And then you move into what's called the testimonial phase. And you say, hey, you actually remind me of a client of ours. And I'm going to use our actual client. His name is Nathan Judge. And Nathan had the same control concerns that you had. And his background, he was a professional risk analyst for like stocks and businesses, and spent years, like a talking head on places like MSNBC and BBC News, analyzing companies and analyzing risk. He looked at our capital gains tax solutions, framework and ecosystem and the DST for months. And just like you, he had, two key conclusions. First, that giving up unilateral control is what keeps the DST compliant, kind of what we talked about. So you don't have full control, but you have controls. And second, that he still had the lender level rights and protections that gave him confidence and security. And this is really like a bank. Like if you have a house and that house that you live in has a loan on it, the bank's not concerned that they don't have control. They have the rights and protections. If you don't pay on time, they're going to foreclose on the house and take back the asset. You have those same rights and protections as the bank does, right? That's just the law. And so once he understood that, and I think once you do, you'll be able to feel comfortable. And so he moved forward with us now, and you can actually hear his experience on our YouTube channel. He's someone who's evaluated risk his entire career, and evaluated, funds and businesses and real estate and stock. And he was able to get comfortable with the structure. And this leads into the leading question, Dan. So after you share that, how would you kind of wrap this up with the leading question?
Yeah, so we've dealt with their objection like in detail, and we pinpointed it. We've kind of did a quid pro quo, which basically just means like, hey, if I resolve this for you, would you be willing to move forward? And we use the testimonial, and that brings us to the leading question, which would be something like this. At this point, can you see why people like Nathan Judge move forward with our services, even though they initially had concerns about control and the role of the trustee? It certainly seems like the combination of third-party transparency, the independent books and records, a major custodian like Charles Schwab, on-demand access to information, and the fact that nothing moves without your approval or signature would fully address your concern. Would you agree? And what we're trying to get them to do is to say, yes, my objection has been handled. I'm able to move forward.
Oh, that's amazing. That's a great way to wrap it up. And by the way, they might say, well, I have a couple other concerns too when you ask that other than that. And that's fine. You say, great, well, let's put that one over to the side right now, but let's focus on this one first before we move to those. And then hopefully you overcome that. And also, it's been really important that when anyone has objections, it's a good thing because it's helping to share what the feelings they have. That's a good thing. And then it's a good thing to work through it. What you really want to look for is that they're specific with the objections, and that they're looking for they're open to solutions, right, for that, and creative solutions and creative ways to be there. If they're vague and not really specific, then it may not be worth your time to spend a lot of time with that person, because they're just not very clear on what their goals are, or very clear on what it is, and it might feel like a moving target, right? And so that's where it's important as a professional who's a financial advisor, CPA, real estate agent, or anyone working through these things, that when you have specific times to work with somebody, you're properly working through these questions, and you're asking the tough questions that basically helps them to move forward or not move forward. And that's really what you want. A yes is really good. No is not so great, but it's better than a maybe, because a maybe just kind of keeps things really in the middle somewhere, right? And unfortunately, with our trust, the way we structure it and the way that it is structured for the IRS compliance, we need to set it up prior to the close of escrow. So every day that goes by that's closer to the close of escrow we're running out of time. And so so to be unclear is to be unkind. So you want to be really clear about what it is, what it's not, if we think it's going to work, if it's not going to work, help them overcome these objections, and realizing that, hey, they're making the biggest probably financial decision they're ever going to make. They're trusting someone brand new to help them with this, typically because they haven't met them much in the past, and it has consequences. It's high stakes, and so it's definitely completely appropriate and clear that they should have objections and challenges to these things, but it's also, as a professional, your duty and your responsibility to help them work through this and be a guide to help them through this. And so, Dan, I feel like sometimes we're kind of like a doctor, we're kind of like a counselor, we're kind of like financial planners, we're real estate investment people, we're tax people, we're this unique combination of a lot of things, right, Dan?
Yeah, and we're also very busy, so I have another call right now that I'm late for. So,
Hey, I'm Brett Swartz. He's Dan Palmer, CapitalGainsTaxSolutions.com. Go there to get started. We appreciate you guys listening or watching this wherever you might be consuming the content, and we hope to talk to you real soon. Bye now.